Hi everyone, welcome again. Now we officially open. Earlier we just softly opened with a nice welcome. This is me, I'm not going to introduce myself again. It's really great to see you all here. I know some of you missed the welcome because you were setting up in the exhibition hall, but it's really lovely, it's a really nice buzz. And so many of us spend a lot of time during COVID talking on Zoom, so it's great to see people's legs now and the rest of their bodies rather than just hands and faces. As I started with the welcome session earlier, I'm going to carry on this trend of just giving you a little hint of Brighton and East Sussex. And this has been great for me. I've been learning lots about places that I walk past every day. And our nugget for this session is the Brighton Pavilion. It's an absolutely marvellous piece of architecture, so if you do have time near the seafront, go and have a look at it. It was built in the mid-1780s. George, Prince of Wales, rented a small lodging overlooking a fashionable promenade in Brighton. At this time, the town was beginning to develop into a seaside retreat for the rich and famous due to its closeness to London. It has not gained the nickname London by Sea for nothing. Its popularity was in part due to health-giving seawater remedies made famous by Lewis physician Dr. Richard Russell, including dipping, which is really, really popular again now, where it's a total body immersion into salt seawater. The prince came here on the advice of his physicians to seek Brighton's remedies. The lodgings didn't get transformed into this oriental palace until 1815, but it was only completed in 1823, by which time George was already king, and he only managed to further visits before his death in 1830. Queen Victoria, I'm not going to do your kings and queens history of England and the UK, you can do that in your spare time for homework, wanted to divorce herself from her ancestors' indulgence and upheld a policy of financial stringency, and finally sold her uncle's pleasure palace to the town of Brighton in 1850. She assumed it would be dismantled and used for materials, so she cleared it out of all her furniture, and the town transformed it into a tourist hub and cultural location. It held concerts and lots of things for the people. And so she very slowly, as it was parts of it that were becoming a museum, brought some of her furniture back. Today, it's a public garden, it's a theatre, it's Brighton Museum, the pavilion is still there as a museum to itself, and at Christmas, it's an ice rink as well. So that's your second nugget today of Brighton's culture. I talked about the Mentimeter already today. Loads of you have actually done it. Like normally when I'm here with students, you go, the Mentimeter is still there. Hello. So thank you, and it's still there. When we do the keynote later, I'll show you some of the responses. But for now, if you want to give a quick scan, if you haven't done it yet, some of you admitted you haven't done it, so I want to see these phones up. There's just 3 questions. What are you most looking forward to about the expo? Where are you joining us from? What burning questions do you want to address? The same QR code leads you to the 3 questions. And now I'm going to hand over to our Executive Dean from the Faculty of Media, Arts and Humanities, Professor Cornel Santos.
Thank you, Vicky. Hello. I haven't prepared anything particularly formal. In the first instance, I wanted to drop by quickly and just warmly welcome you to the university, and more than welcome you, say thank you for being here today. It's fantastic to see so many of you, and it's a fantastic event, and thank you, Vicky, for all your leadership in this field. I was going to preference this by, I found myself sort of saying, oh, this showcases the best of arts and humanities. And then I kind of stopped and I said, is that actually true? And I don't think it is. It's not the right frame. This showcases the best of why we are thinking about the world and why we are in academia altogether. It's not just arts and humanities. There couldn't, and there isn't, many things that are more meaningful than thinking about the connection between our past, our heritage, and the digital world in which we are moving. And the relevance of it is in a way so self-evident that's quite often difficult to put it into words, but it's fantastic to see it in the form of the program for this event, with so many different ways of thinking, articulating, playing, trying, workshopping, conceptually analysing, and it's a fantastic program, and thank you to all of our staff and Vicky's team who've been involved in that, and thank you for being part of that. It also kind of showcases some of the things we are, proud is always a difficult word, but we are kind of proud at Sussex. It brings together our long tradition of Jewish and German Jewish studies with our long and proud tradition of interdisciplinarity and the study of media and technology and the impact of media and technology on everyday life and how they shape the world around us. And I think that connection between content, technology and culture, while studied through one of the most important case studies that there is, through commemorating the Holocaust, is one that also fundamentally will shape and does shape the world in which we all live for our lifetimes and the many generations that will follow us. So it's not just the cutting edge of arts and humanities that we are witnessing the next during the duration of the conference. It's also the cutting edge really of science, and it brings so many things together, and it's fantastic. And it's fantastic that you're part of it, and to say proud for a second time, we're really proud to have you and for you to be our guest. So thank you so much, and thank you, Vicky, and I hope you have a fantastic time. Today I'm largely sort of bound up in meetings elsewhere, but I will be sneaking into a number of sessions tomorrow, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing much more about your own research and initiatives. Thank you.
And I'd now like to welcome Johannes Woodloff from the Alfred Landecker Foundation to say a few words.
Dear Professor Victoria Grace Richardson-Walden, dear Vicky, dear Professor Colin Sanders, dear participants, dear speakers, and also dear participants online. On behalf of the Alfred Landecker Foundation, I have the pleasure of welcoming you to the inaugural Connective Holocaust Commemoration Expo 2025. Dear Vicky, thank you for organizing this important gathering. Let me begin by briefly introducing the background and mission of our foundation. The Alfred Landecker Foundation, as does the Landecker Digital Memory Lab, bears the name of Alfred Landecker, a Jewish procurist from Mannheim who was deported in 1942 and subsequently murdered in either Sobibor or Belzec, we will never know for certain. His daughter, Emily Landecker, was in a relationship with Albert Reimann Jr., a committed anti-Semite and Nazi, who together with his father, Albert Reimann Sr., managed the medium-sized chemical company Johann Abing Kieser GmbH in Ludwigshafen. Decades later, the Reimann family, now shareholders in the JAB holding company, commissioned an academic investigation into both the company's involvement during the Nazi period and the biography of Alfred Landecker. The results of this independent research were published in 2023 and 2024 by the Wallstein Verlag. Against this historical backdrop, the Alfred Landecker Foundation was established with a clear mission: to commemorate the crimes of National Socialism, to combat anti-Semitism, and to protect Jewish life and democratic values today. We pursue this mission by supporting Holocaust survivors and former forced laborers of the Kieser Company, and by initiating and funding a wide range of projects in partnership with civil society and academia, exploring, amongst other endeavors, modes of contemporary remembrance in a digitalized world. The Landecker Digital Memory Lab represents a groundbreaking effort to secure the future of Holocaust remembrance in a digital age. By connecting researchers, institutions, and creators, the lab fosters new approaches to memory work. Through exploration of interactive technologies, digital storytelling, and critical engagement with AI, social media, and gaming. It offers training and support to museums and memorials, advocates for sustainable digital infrastructures at the highest policy levels, and, as we will see in a minute, develops a living database of global digital remembrance projects. Large language models and other aspects of AI shape and change the way we search the web, interact with social media, work, research, connect, and receive answers to the questions we have. It also changes the way we trust or mistrust images, videos, or other forms of documentation, whether contemporary or historical, and reminds us of the need to strengthen our critical judgment. For many individuals, a prompt or game may serve as their initial encounter with the history of National Socialism, the Holocaust, and other sometimes contested forms of mass violence. In light of this, the integration of knowledge, practical experience, and the networking of stakeholders' initiatives becomes crucial to the response to these challenges and opportunities in a well-prepared manner. To address this need, we must look to initiatives that not only engage these questions, but actively shape the future of remembrance. The Landecker Digital Memory Lab is an inspiring example of how memory and innovation can come together to create a more resilient and responsible digital culture in a time when denial, distortion, and misinformation are gaining ground. At the spearhead of these efforts stands the Connective Holocaust Commemoration Expo, which we are here to experience over the next 3 days. The Expo showcases a vibrant and forward-looking landscape of digital Holocaust memory projects with, for example, immersive VR experiences, serious games, workshops, and interdisciplinary dialogues. It explores how remembrance can be reimagined in the digital age. It offers critical perspectives on the ethics of digital storytelling, innovative educational and research tools, and the role of social media in shaping memory. In this sense, the Landecker Digital Memory Lab exemplifies the core mission of the Alfred Landecker Foundation to defend democratic values, confront anti-Semitism and other forms of group-based enmity, and preserve the memory of the Holocaust for future generations. By harnessing the power of digital tools, the lab not only safeguards historical knowledge, it also creates new spaces for critical reflection, education and civic engagement. It builds on the Foundation's commitment to innovation and accountability in remembrance culture, ensuring that memory is not confined to the past, but actively shape how we respond to the challenges of the present. In closing, I would like to express my appreciation to the organizers of this event, especially to Vicky, Philippa, Mel, Stephen, Kate, and the University of Sussex for assembling such a distinguished group of professionals from memorial institutions, researchers, and scholars in history, Holocaust studies and digital humanities, creatives, tech experts, educators, trainers, and policymakers. Above all, I want to thank all of you for your participation, your research, and your intellectual engagement. And maybe to let me add something more personal, as someone who was originally trained in archaeology and anthropology, I hope I may be permitted a final reflection. Since the beginning of humanity, we have existed in a, so to say, neutral relationship with the symbols, materials, and tools we produce, just as they in turn have shaped us and those who come after us. After all, it's not the spear that drives us to war, nor the wheel that made us conquerors, but both have certainly amplified the consequences of our choices. So let us seek to understand the tools that are available to us and read them with care and wisdom. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to spend the majority of this session as a team, me again, sorry, and my colleagues Dr. Kate Marrison and Dr. Ben Pelling, who are the research team of the Landecker Digital Memory Lab, introducing our digital memory database. We are beta launching it here at the Expo, so at the Expo, next week at our summer school, because we don't get a break. Next week also at the British and Irish Association of Holocaust Conference, 2 weeks after that, because we do get a little break, at the MSA conference in Prague. So we're going to do a little summer tour of the database, do as much user testing as we can at those events, and then digest that. And then we're aiming for the formal launch to be next January. So what we're talking about here is very much beta in the spirit of iterative digital development. And we are very much kind of wedded to the idea that we develop the project with the stakeholders and the audience and the participants that we want to be part of it. And we did an alpha testing a few weeks ago, which we'll talk about as part of this project as well. This is just a glimpse of the homepage, and Ben will be talking more about it here. And in fact, Ben was logged on now. So I want to kind of take a step back, and we're each going to talk about a slightly different kind of intervention in the project so far, of the kind of dilemma of like the scope of this, right? What do we include? Pretty much everything you make these days is in some way digital. The Holocaust is a term that can be debated by a million historians constantly, and memory is a very flexible term as well. So here's, I don't know how clear it is. Oh, it is clear on the bigger screen, that's good. I couldn't fit it all on the slide. When I was just thinking about the digital part of digital Holocaust memory, these were at the very early stages of doing this research when we got some seed funding of £10,000 to do the initial bit of field work. This was what I was struck by when you talk about the digital. These are sort of most of, and probably not all of the elements. How do you start to capture that? How can you record it? How can you keep it? Because what we were seeing was a lot of museums would create an app or a project. So much money, and more important than money, so much human time and expertise and sources would be put into a project, and then it just disappears, and no one's saving the files, or it's, these are digital projects, so they've got lots of different assets, and then they're not being reused in a new space. And I know I'm staring at Jan because he's going to talk about the importance of open data and open source later. But it's sort of this messiness of data all over the place, and projects and energy and time and passion as well, and love and care for things are sort of dissolving with these short-term projects. But then what is it? If you want to archive these projects, what are you archiving? Is it just the output? And then is it just one person's use of the output? Because a game can be played in multiple different ways, an archive can be explored in thousands of ways. And yeah, that was a dilemma. Whether we have solved it or not, we'll find out. So the aim of the methodological approach to capturing this, and this is an image from a composite image I made of the Dachau art app, was really focused, my focus was the digital Holocaust memory, and the digital in general, and I think this is often forgotten, is always a human-computer entanglement. And what Johannes was saying there about humans and their tools, I'm always skeptical in digital tools, but they're ours. We made it. We're responsible for the waste that we produce from it. We're responsible for what we do with it. We're responsible for the code and the programming that emerges. And AI developers will like to tell you, AI, we don't understand what our model does anymore. It's doing its own thing. They'd like to step back from that responsibility. But technology is always an entanglement between human and computers when we're talking about the digital. What I wanted to try and do then was listen to the computational and the human, and where they came into dialogue with each other. The initial idea was to do walkthrough interviews with everyone involved in it. So not just to capture my experience as a user, so for art, for example, of me using the app as a user, but every person that was involved in that project, say a programmer, someone who designed the back end, someone who's designing the software or the graphics, and the educator and the curators, and get each of them to do a walkthrough with the app and talk and interview them while we're doing the walkthrough. I started doing that with a couple of projects and very quickly discovered that this is what happened. Someone would get their app, start talking, put it down and say, so the funding was this big issue, or our team didn't agree with each other, and the app would just sit here for the next 45 minutes. So I stopped that. And instead we step back and try to think computationally and think outside of my kind of human way of being and existing in the world, and actually we can do that joining up in the database, right? We can allow people to listen to watch the walkthrough and listen to the different voices. And actually trying to put these together wasn't working. So we've separated them out, but you can then put them back together. And remembering the digital stuff are assets that can do that. And so what we've got then is two different kinds of assets. We have interviews, most of them are audio. There are still a few walkthroughs because a lot of the tech designers of projects wanted to walk through the back ends of their projects and Unity, for example. So we'll have mostly audio interviews, and here's one from Falstad, Arne Langes. There are subtitles, there are chapters. There's a tension with these, between the tags and the chapters, where the chapters are the structure of the interview as human interviewers structured it, versus what the interviewers actually followed as a human way of speaking. One of the bits of feedback we had in our alpha was that, you can see design and development coming back up again as chapters. And we actually wanted to capture the very organic nature of talking in dialogue as humans. We don't follow structures. We're rebels. We don't listen to the question. We go, I hear your question, but I want to talk about this thing and come back to that question. And we wanted to kind of capture it in a way that you could follow this sort of organic flow of, and the disruption that we have when we talk, and trying to bring people back to, on track. And then this very computational way of exploring it, which is the kind of the index terms in the transcript. And so the form of indexing we did is a process called, Todd Presner calls imminent indexing. Another thing that came up in our alpha testing of this year, you have a lot of index terms. And this is why. Imminent indexing is when you listen from the source up and the speaker up. So rather than imposing a hierarchy of terms that you've defined in a particular context, you listen up. This is a nightmare if you want to make your metadata speak to other people's metadata, and this is interesting to talk about and think about in the future. But this is what we wanted to begin at this point, to listen to what people were saying. And we'll talk about this when we come to themes later, potential research themes, but there's things like listening to the places that people talk about. One of the things that are interesting is, are digital projects telling the same canonic stories? If you look at the whole global landscape, are we prioritising particular figures and places like we have done elsewhere? Is there a new canon emerging because of the way digital technologies are giving us access to particular things? And we can only really tell that and really get to the peripheral if we listen and index from below. And here this idea was about, trying to reconcile the computational readability and the human readability. And with that, this kind of chapter, organic, messy human flow and the very organised, discrete thing of tags was, I hope captures what my colleague here, Beatrice Faze, talks about, is capturing the continuous flow of the human and the organic world, and then the discontinuous discreteness of the computational as well. Okay, so I'm going to pass on to Kate, who's going to talk a little bit about the map, which is part of our scoping research.
Thank you, Vicky. So yeah, hopefully you've all seen this before. We launched this during the liberation of Bergen-Belsen on the anniversary as an open resource to all of you. It's just on Padlet, so you can now access it through the digitalmemorylab.com, our central website. Really what we wanted to do here was to think, what does the Digital Holocaust Memoryscape look like? Where are the projects? What are they? And how can we just take stock of what we currently have? So this is what we came up with. Many thanks also to Stefan, who was formerly at the Alfred Landecker Foundation, who has a kind of monthly blog about new digital projects. So that has also really helped us inform what's going on, particularly in Germany and more regionally. And yeah, we basically have plotted everything that we know about and sent a survey out to colleagues and allies and friends to say, tell us about your projects. And we want to kind of add these to our database over time. So the idea will be that actually these pins here will carry over to the database eventually, and we will be able to speak to each of these projects, get to all of those different people who are working on them, and include hopefully interviews and walkthroughs where we're able to access those projects. Am I the next slide? Maybe that's you. So just to speak to some of the qualitative user testing that we've done so far, we're essentially leading this through focus groups and also giving people to have kind of play around. So thankfully, Anne Lammers and her digital collective memory site launched our alpha testing session, and we were able to put people in different groups based on their professional identities, and we basically asked them to take on different personalities. So, for example, could be a PhD student looking to find different projects on the map. I don't have a lot of funding, I need to be sensible with my money, where can I go, who can I talk to? And we use the database as a central scoping research tool to find out where can I go to, who can I talk to, what projects exist. Another example of a user testing identity was someone who wants to put an exhibition on about media archaeology, for example, and we could point them to Anne Frank, as we have in the Sussex Humanities Lab here today, Anne Frank Through the Ages. So what were those early tech innovations that Anne Frank had been using? So they could find this through the database, listen to interviews, and identify projects that way. The fourth set of people actually began with the assets, so there are walkthroughs and interviews themselves, and then had to just discover what they could, beginning with the video player and moving out. After that, we had an hour focus group focusing on 3 main areas, so you can see on the screen there: discoverability and functionality, usability, and interactivity. So this is where we're really looking for that early feedback to say what would be useful for you, how do we kind of balance those kind of theoretical and idealistic things that this database would do, but actually practically, and how can it speak to all our different user groups as well. And interactivity was also thinking about you as users. So we have a My Collections page, which we might speak to a bit later on, to think about how you could save these collections, you can chop and copy them, keep them, save them, share them with colleagues. How do you want to navigate this database, and how can it assist in your research? So they're kind of our central questions. I think I'm passing over to Ben for the quantitative.
Thanks, Kate. Good afternoon. So in order to support the testing and the feedback that Kate was gathering, we ran some also tracking in the back end. It was all anonymised data and aggregated, and it's just to give us a bit of an overview of how people are actually using it in person. So one is we can follow entire sort of user journeys as they go through the website. But what's really useful is we can start using things like these heat maps, which will show how far people have scrolled down pages, I'm sure any of you familiar with web design will be quite used to these, and unsurprisingly, the top of the page is always a few more, but it really helps us to see how far down, maybe how we adjust the design if needed. And on that, we can also track where the mouse pointers are actually going, where they're clicking. This can be particularly useful if we also want to uncover any areas that either people are missing or places that might not be functioning as we hoped. So this is sort of just, let's say, aggregated data we've been gathering, which we can combine with the more in-person feedback. So is submitted, yeah. Oh yeah, so just a just a little bit. Just a little bit on the sort of building the back end. I'm not an expert in this area. So we quite luckily he's actually here today. We have our in-house developer, James, who has been working with us very closely on building the back end. As far as possible, it's being built on open source software. I've just grabbed a few logos. So the backend basically based on the MySQL and PHP on the Laravel platform, and then we've brought in various other libraries for a lot of the functionality to allow us to build the globe map. Obviously, run all the video functions we've got, which we'll see more, and the search function. So, as I say, the idea is to use as much open source as possible. And also, for us, as we get later on, we'll be able to sort of write up how we actually approach the project ourselves. So if we're gathering how everyone else has done projects, we really need to be able to keep track of that on our own one. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview. As you will no doubt be hearing many times this week, we encourage you to go to the exhibition hall and try it for yourselves. Have a play around, ask some questions, and see what you think. But just a quick view. You've seen the front page already here. This gives us, at the moment, we've got 3 main ways in for searching the database, and particularly, as you saw with the indexing earlier, that particularly feeds into that. It's very useful. We currently have a globe map showing where the projects are. This is something we're in constant discussion and development about various map options. And where we might develop this in the future to do that. And we also are working through ideas on how we can allow users to browse as well through the website, who might want to look at some more thematic kind of way to find stuff. Within this, we have the little bit of information about each organisation that we have in there. And then we also have some information about each of the projects, just at a very high level, just to introduce people. And as you can see from these then, particularly on the projects, it then lists all the walkthroughs and interviews that we've captured. And that will be expanding quite a lot, I think, later this year, as we add more content to it. This is just, I think Vicky's already shown one, but these are just a couple of the walkthroughs that have been recorded. These are very deliberately not an attempt to capture everything, we're not repeating the site or the app or whatever. But it's to give a sort of real-world user experience I've gone through. I think both of these were Vicky's recordings for these ones. So yes, the idea is so you can get an actual sense of how a user goes through it. And then, as Vicky was saying, these obviously are then supported by the interviews that have been recorded. And as I say, we've already had slide explained. One part was, as again already sort of like mentioned, we thought it was very important for users to be able to save collections, items they want, and so they can save whole walkthroughs or from the whole interviews, or they can take a segment of the interview that they find particularly relevant, and they can store them in collections, and they can have multiple collections for different projects or different themes, and then this is connected directly to their account, so they can come in and find these and save them for the future. And then within that, one of the parts we're developing is the ability to play those clips and those collections and to sort of create maybe whether it's for a presentation board or just somewhere they can have it all together. So again, this is something we're sort of adding and working on at the moment. Again, as we build the content. Yeah, and this was just another slide again, just to show all the indexing terms. So which, you know, as Vicky has said, is you know, as we build those as we go through. So they can also then be used. They will then link you to other uses of the terms if you want to go and find that. So it starts to build those connections that we're getting, sort of particularly linguistically or in terms of indexing, across the various different interviews and projects. So later in the project, one of my roles will be looking to see how we can use all this data we're gathering to do some digital research. So just some ideas that I'm currently percolating, and please, if anyone's got any thoughts, please do come and share them with me. I'm always keen to hear. So one thing I'm hoping we'll be able to do some network analysis, whether this may be literally with organisations who've worked together, might be quite interesting to see how that goes. But also looking at maybe the types of technologies and the types of projects. We might be able to start making some quite interesting sort of aggregated interesting links on that kind of thing. Another thing is obviously we've got all of this, all of these interviews now and all of the walkthroughs and stuff is, might be some text analysis, particularly something like topic modelling. Be interesting to see, I think, particularly over time, how maybe some of the language changes as technology does. And I think this might be a very good resource for that as we go. Another one, as I say, so as we all know, the technology changes and projects change, and I think this data will give us a very easy way to map all of that information and to have a look and see how that has progressed over time. And another one, back to the mapping, as I say, we're playing around with a lot of ideas on the mapping and the different things we can do. So I'm quite interested in obviously there's the two elements. One is mapping sort of the time and the locations of the subject matter of all of the various projects, but then also when they've been created and built, and again back to that sort of as technology has developed over the years, how has the world changed, as it were, for all of us. So I think that's and then we're back to Kate.
So one of my research interests in what could become out of the database in our research is really, as Vicky mentioned, this is a project about listening, this is a project about understanding what it takes to actually build these projects, who's involved at every level. So one of the things I'd like to do is, you know, develop this idea of memory makers, and actually that this is all made up of so many different people's time and labour, and who are those, from volunteers, for example, at ṋôagship doing amazing work with social media accounts, all the way up to kind of historians who come in and make decisions around archives and collections, and everyone in between. So I think, you know, as this conference is doing, really bringing together technical partners as well, and having those dialogues and thinking about the tensions that exist there, the barriers, and how we overcome those. So thinking about the kind of real human element at the centre of all this digital work and output. Another thing here, as I put on the slide, you know, which stories are being told. So we're interested in thinking about actually taking our database at the end of this and seeing if it maps onto those kind of canons and traditional trajectories of Holocaust memory. What would it mean to build a physical exhibition out of the data and see, would it follow that kind of Western-centric narrative? Would we go from 1933, you know, all the way out to liberation? How would we make that exhibition based on the digital projects that we've collected? Would be one of another kind of sub-project things we'd be interested. And then by whom and where are these stories told? So are kind of lesser-known histories and peripheral histories coming out? Who are the survivors and victims that are involved in these things? Are we, you know, actually being more robust with those types of things of bystander, victim? What does the digital do, and how does it move on from those traditional kind of Holocaust histories? And then I didn't put this on the slide, but one thing we're also really interested in thinking about is kind of a graveyard of digital projects. So what are the projects that have kind of fallen by the wayside along the way? Could it be that we resurrect some of those projects in our innovation sprints, or do we just learn from them? Is it digital obsolescence? Was it a funding problem? Was it copyright errors? Was it a breakdown of communications because people don't mean the same thing when they talk about VR or modelling or something like that? So to identify those projects, see what's possible, and this is actually going back to something Ben mentioned about the map. One thing we'd like to have is a filter which shows actually when the project existed and then if it disappears. And one of the impacts that we hope this project as a whole has over time is that we see that filter the projects will stop disappearing over time, and the impact will be that we, you know, fund smarter, think about sustainability, think about collaboration and longevity. So that will be a way that we could actually visually measure that impact as well, and hope to make some interventions in the field.
Just one thing to Kate's picture of the map there as well. One of those things about the by whom and where is what stories are being told and who's telling the history in is it other countries? And we talked this morning about narratives in Belarus and Ukraine. Are those stories being captured in digital devices and servers in those countries or elsewhere? And the politics of that, right? And often the politics is quite meaningful and powerful, and is about saving and restoring memory in places where people don't necessarily have the same power to do that. And other times there might be other tensions at play. So that's a kind of another area of interest there. And I will say with the memory makers, and I always say this little anecdote, so often when we first approach institutions, they give us the big names, like the lead curator and the CEO and the director. And we talk to these people and it's great. And then at some point they filter us down to the people in the front of house and the IT team. They live in a different world in your institutions. They know so much stuff. Please listen to them. In one place, and this organisation is here somewhere, some representatives, their front of house staff determined who got their app. The reasons they picked the person was based on whether they liked them. And like when you talk to the educators and the curators, they talked about this like really careful rationale of why they gave certain groups this app. And actually there's this one really sweet woman going, "You're a nice kid, you have it." Not in any kind of educational context, not with the onboarding and the offboarding that was so carefully curated. So I think one of the really interesting things here is to see these different kind of power relations within institutions. And I know it came up in our recommendation report workshops that so many people who are very tech savvy and experts in tech who come into Holocaust institutions for a really short period of time on a funded grant know so much and they're experts in their field and they feel so not treated like experts. And they're here for a year, they do the tech for a project and they leave. And there were a couple of people in our workshop around digitalization, I think, who talked about their experiences there. And I hope also that this allows us to start thinking about power balances and roles. And as I said earlier on, everyone is equal based on their own expertise and experience. And all of these people help safeguard our memory. The other area I'm particularly interested in thinking about the database, which is less academic, is thinking about the non-academic uses. One is helping people within Holocaust museums, heritage education, except I'm going to miss one always, so just heritage education, but also creative teams, learn from existing practice. I think Iris once often said, it was Philip, we're reinventing the wheel. We're like, we're doing VR. Who else has done VR? But we can't get to the sites to see the stuff. So let's just start working on all the problems. We go through the same cycles that other people have. Let the next VR intervention be a build-up on all the other learning that's been done. And one of the ways, people don't always have time to share all of their knowledge and all of their experience, so we hope this kind of 1-2 hour interviews, you can listen to 20 people over a couple of weeks, you have sudden access to lots and lots of voices and lots of different experiences. Team learning, so within institutions, I know that lots of people that we've interviewed have said, I'm the communications manager or I'm the curator. Someone came to us and said they want to do VR, AR, whatever. Now I have to convince the director. And they try and they get there, but it's like a long journey. And it's getting easier, I think, in most organizations. But what if you could take some snippets of audio of different interviews or snippets of different walkthroughs and demonstrate to them a little presentation really easily of like, look, here's some stuff that's been done in different places. This is what someone says about the impact of the audience in their place, etc., and build that up. But also learning within teams where when you're starting like a VR or social media campaign, and again building some clips of examples to share as a team when you're starting to work on a new project. Stakeholder meetings, as I just mentioned. Okay, so there are two things it's a secret ploy. We've got you all here to Sussex to try and do two things while you're here. One, as Ben mentioned, I think Kate mentioned as well, in our exhibitor space at the opposite end of Dachau, we are friends, I promise you, but we look like we're facing each other at either ends of the space, is our beta testing station. If you've got just 15-20 minutes to come play with the site, experiment with it, fill in a quick survey, we would love you forever. We love you anyway, but we love you a little bit more if you come to the beta testing station. And I really emphasise that we had so many debates about the map, we've had so many debates about the user area, and we just decided to stop on them and go, we want to hear what people want from them a bit more before we start fiddling with them so much. So treat it as a space where constructive criticism is very, very welcome. This is about doing this collaboratively. We want to hear your thoughts and what you would like, and what you would benefit from if you were going to use this kind of resource. The other thing, and you also have a postcard in your tote bags, it's green with our logo on. Tell us about your project. So if you work in a Holocaust organisation, even if we have done walkthroughs with you, the survey is actually quite in-depth. We want to know things about like your social media strategy, your digital strategies, do you have one, your engagement with AI or your thoughts about AI, but also the projects you have, the types of projects they are. And the last question is, can we come do walkthroughs, please? Interviews. So even also if you're an academic group or a creative team, whoever you are, if you have been leading digital projects, please tell us about them. We'd like to sort of capture them as an institution, if that makes it, or an organisation or a team. So it would be easier for us to look at the spreadsheet that it produces if you don't have 20 people from your organisation doing 20 different surveys, but like, I'm looking at Ɂagship, in front of me, like Imperial War Museum goes, let's all put our responses on one survey. But yeah, you've got the QR code in your postcard as well. Also, please just share it with your network. If you're not on the map, we want to put you on the map. We have 362-ish projects on the map. If you're not on there, it's because you have not come onto our horizon yet, or you are on our list and we haven't put you on there yet in the last few weeks before the expo. Forgive us for that. But please, this is not, the best thing to do, I would say, is tell us everything you think is digital Holocaust memory, and then we will decide what does and doesn't fit into our remit. I think the two key things that we don't include are educational resources that have been put online but aren't sort of digitally interactive in themselves, so like PDFs or lesson plans posted on the website, because that's a huge amount of content. And also digital humanities projects that are solely research projects. So you've done you've done Minting Cole's work, who's a great friend of ours. You've done geographies of the Holocaust project, and it's a map produced for your research as a kind of demonstration of your research, where sometimes those projects do cross over and become public memory projects. So it's about the commemoration, so it's about the kind of projects that are trying to engage publics. What I will say is a shout out to Alex Sessa, who helped us with there he is, helped us build the original hierarchy for our, can't use the word, for our index, by listening to a huge amount, all of the stuff that we had at the time, and then building that from this. So the kind of basic taxonomy that we have was built up on that imminent listening, and that imminent listening was mostly Alex. And then the team have sort of also gone back and listened to different things and built on that. But that was an amazing kind of grounding to support our work. I think I'm going to almost stop there, but to say one of the projects, I promise we've already shut that about them as well. One of the projects that were very kind to invite us when I did the scoping work was the ₦Frank House, and also Janis Lipkin Memorial. Over in the Sussex Humanities Lab in Silverstone, they have two awesome exhibitions. Ravis is smiling at me now. Please go and see them. They are amazing. We had to give them a separate space because they're so awesome and they're big. And they're like, there's the history of ₦Frank Digital. I will tell you now, 2 old 90s maps blew up in the last 2 weeks. And we now have one. I hope it's working. Yes. And yeah, I love old tech, so I'm very excited about it. That room is part of our Sussex Humanities Lab. It's where immediate archaeology happens here, so it's like the best place for this stuff to be. It is less than a minute's walk from here, so if you have some time, go explore. Hannah's Story is a VR project related to the Janis Lipkin Memorial in Latvia, the outskirts of Riga, and the ₦Frank Digital is going from that all the way through to the VR and the other multitude of digital projects they have there. So please spend some time going to see their awesome stuff as well, and tell us about your project. We have like 13 minutes or so. If anyone does have any questions, feel free to shout, put your hand up. I think we have some microphones somewhere. If not, we can shout. Any questions? I like not questioning the big room. We're going to be around for like 2.5 days, and the dinners are here. Come talk to us, but please, most importantly, come and talk to Jade and James, mostly on their exhibitor space. Ben and Kate are going to be there at lunchtimes as well tomorrow. Please come and use it, explore it, give us all the feedback you want to. Be as critical as you can be, because we want it to function for the people that need it. We will keep doing walkthroughs and interviews as much and as long as you invite us and allow us to do them. So, yes, Anne.
I actually have a question for Kate, maybe. So you talked about the research that you plan to do. Is that part of, maybe you said it, I didn't listen, but is that part of the larger research she's doing, or is that going to be like single papers? Is that going to be published somewhere, such as for the platform, for the database? What do you plan to do with that?
So kind of how that manifests is, ongoing. It will evolve in different ways depending which particular part of that project you're interested in. There are kind of a multitude of things we're thinking about what we can do with it at the moment. There'll definitely be academic papers. We're thinking about other ways to bring it out through the innovation sprints, for example, and we can sort of discuss it depending on which aspect you're interested in.
Yeah, there will be papers and at least one book. She says, gulping. There was a book that was supposed to be due during my maternity. But I had a baby, so that book is not published yet. But there's at least one monograph, at least one edited collection. We've had discussions with the team about kind of what an edited collection should and could be that's most useful from here, and we want to be open access as much as possible. Doesn't need to be a book. Could we do workshops, get people to try different digital tools like the ones people were getting us to do this morning, which was awesome, and then produce that some kind of like video tutorial kind of platform or something else that's much more kind of digital and technical. So those ideas are kind of coming out as our new way of talking about time after Expo. There was the before Expo time and the after Expo time. But we're hoping this will grow out once we start to look at the data a little bit more in depth, and that grows out of the platform functioning, having the stuff in there as well. So kind of our work for the next sort of 6 to 8 months will be more user testing in the next month or so, building on the responses at the platform, but also simultaneously doing more walkthroughs and interviews, which then obviously informs the index even further. And we will keep doing walkthroughs and interviews for the next 4 and a bit years that we have left of our funding. We have been thinking increasingly about the legacy of different ways to keep capturing that. We want this platform to be a living database, and that was a term from Stefan Johannes's previous colleague. And I must give a personal thanks to Stefan, because Stefan he's a wonderful, humble human being, and he's always sort of in the background, just amazingly mapping, he's not here, and talking about and knowing about memory work, but also you say, I've got an idea to do a thing, and he's like, yeah, but could you push it more? And he does, and he just says that, he's just like, oh, but could you do more with it? And he lays that seed in your head, and that's why we have an expo. I said, oh, we're doing an academic conference, and he just went, but could you push it more? And here we are, so we can blame him. There will be lots of different ways that research will come out. And one of the ways will also be a learning platform, which will be kind of taking some of this stuff and translating it into a space where people can kind of follow a learning narrative on a particular topic. What I will say, if there are any kind of queries and qualms around security stuff, on the one hand, there's the more kind of technical bureaucratic thing that this is sit under our ITS team here. We will have pen testing, and we will have on-prem servers at the moment is the agreement. But more at the front end, it will be open access in it, it will be free, but it will be behind, it's a password protected site, and you can't download the content. Of course, there are ways that you can get around that if you want to. With the download, you can screenshot your thing, but we would hope that the people who are coming on here, and we will have a user agreement, are the right kind of people. And to get a password and use it similarly to DCM, you'll either have to have, for us, an academic, what you call them, bit of your email address, .ac.uk or whatever it is in different countries, or a recognised museum or organisational email, or be by request through one of those people. So, hey, we're the creative team working with this museum, we check with the museum, you can have this limited access while you're doing this project. And that will be very much human moderated, as well as picking up on the kinds of email addresses as well. We're not trying to just listen to people about their work, but listening to how they want their data to be shared as well. there's no more questions right
Well,
now.
Vicky, I
Yeah,
have one.
Yes.
So in some sense now, it's like a bottom-up process, right? You're collecting a lot of information from the community, but are you also then planning in a second phase to think more about standards, quality criteria, also as guidelines for these kinds of projects? So what's your view on that?
Yeah, I think that is always there. That's very much part of this project. So with the standards thing is always a hard one, right? And that was the original aim of the recommendation report project. We're going to create standards. And then you start listening to everyone. You go, well, you can't just impose standards from the top on all the different kinds of projects around the world, in all the different national contexts, where one of the biggest struggles people have is the different kind of legal ways that you can use data in different contexts. You can't impose the standards and the laws change and the institutional policies change. So that's why we changed that project from standards to recommendations, but certainly frameworks. The frameworks will grow out of this listening. Already some stuff around impact analysis. So when you talk, we asked a bunch of questions about audience testing and impact analysis, and for some people, they just say, oh yeah, of course we look at Google Analytics. Of course we look at, oh no, maybe I haven't looked at it for a few months. But that's not impact analysis, right? That's just statistics on users downloading and where they might be. So there's a really diverse literacy about what impact analysis means, and Paul, I know your work at the Future Memory Foundation, it does the very extreme end of that from the Google Analytics quick check every now and again. So we're hoping by listening to all of these different projects to build together like frameworks of different ways people are doing kind of thorough impact analysis and different kind of disciplines that are coming into that, and be able to develop some documents that do that. You're smiling at me now, I like this.
No, because I think it will be unavoidable at some point in time, also as a community, to at least have an attempt to articulate standards. For instance, to me a standard is that you empirically validate the impact of whatever you build. It's not just, okay, I have a big ego and I want to do something. That's not enough anymore, right? So that's a standard I think we should all agree to. Or ethics standards, right? So these are things we must be able to articulate collectively. And I think it will be really very, very relevant for the community to, also in the context of what you're now building, to have platforms for exactly those discussions that in the end are not necessarily imposed. If you don't want to follow them, don't follow them. But then you lose out on, let's say, some form of recognition by a community.
I think with the impact analysis example, one of the challenges for researchers, and whether this be researchers in heritage organisations or in academia, you want to be able to compare the impact of different projects. You can't, because the methods being used for the impact analysis that are available are totally different. One person's like, we just did some focus groups, and then it's kind of, your team put in this really kind of social sciences, kind of hardcore methodology stuff. They're not comparable in any way. You know, the limitations of one is totally different to the other one. And so being able to really listen to people describe their methods, and one of the things we're going to do is integrate links out to open access papers or other resources that people mention in their interviews. That will be a later stage. And then give people the ability to really properly listen and to compare. And yeah, part of our next bit of our work will be then chunking some of this stuff together so it's even more readable. You know, not everyone has time to go listen. Some people who came to our alpha testing was like, oh yeah, I want some of these interviews so I can make like a podcast list of like, some people are just going to sit on the bus and listen to a lot of interviews about digital Holocaust memory, great. But most people aren't. Most people are like, I need to find this information quick, I've been told I need to make this project, I've got like 6 weeks, so I've only got a Friday from 2 to 5 to fix it. So asking how to create some documents that are actually from real experience in different parts of the world is really important. And I think like one really great part of this project, and you know, this isn't a project we've collected yet, but it's on our map, and I know Laura's here from the museum in Kiribati, is that you know, some of the social media stuff happening in Latin America, particularly Brazil, is amazing. But how many of you follow them on Instagram? How many of you follow ־ You know, these are great teams and great work that's happening. That's very different from some of the more different, restricted or kind of, how do I phrase this? Different to the way that it's happening in Germany, for example. And I think there's so much to be learned from places that aren't always at the centre when we're talking about Holocaust spaces and Holocaust memory. And often peripheral sites that don't have the same kind of resource that the big American museums are actually being really inventive and pushing boundaries in this field. So I'm hoping this is very much also this flow of information from what has always been treated like the centre, the big canonic institutions, and the peripheral. Actually, the peripheral might be the place to learn from as well. Okay, we are basically at 2:30. You have a break. Have coffee, have treats. Hopefully you didn't eat them all. I have. And then at 3 o'clock will be your next session. But please go and see the Anne Frank and Hannah story, because they're awesome. No, I love them. Go and see them. And also, you could be